Hello guys. Well, as you can see, I have a very bad microphone right now, so listening to this is going to be a bit painful. I will try to use AI to clear the noise later, see how it works. But in the meantime, well, we will have to do it like this, unfortunately. I apologize. So today I'm going to talk about GPX files and how that can help us navigate. And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because many of you ask me for tips on how I do things and so on and so on. Right? So how do you create GPX files for hiking or running or cycling? It doesn't really matter, as we will see in a minute. So first of all, I'm going to explain you very quickly what is a GPX file. We're going to open here, we're going to go somewhere, for instance wash, and here I have this GPX file, for instance, and I'm going to open with a text editor. So essentially, as you can see here, a GPX file is just a text file. It's a plain text file, right? Probably if you try to download my files from my Google Drive, you have already noticed that. So GPX is an acronym for GPS Exchange Format. So it's one of the formats in which you can store geopositional information. And as you can see here, there are a number of fields. So first you have a track, then you have segment. This is only relevant for you, just for out of curiosity, and also because sometimes you might need to edit this manually. And then you have the first track point with latitude, longitude and elevation, right? And in fact, typically the minimum information you're going to have here is latitude and longitude. The elevation is optional. And in addition to this, you might have timestamps, you may have information about points of interest, you may have links to pictures, anything you can install, because actually GPX is some sort of a dialect, or is inspired by another format which is you might be more familiar with, which is XML, right? So you can consider GPX as a special case of an XML file, and it's just a format to store structured information, right, in a hierarchical way, because obviously we can store this information in many different ways. For instance, my script, in addition to producing the GPX file, also produces a comma separated value file, which is also a text file. Well, as its name indicates, it, instead of having this kind of structure, it has just a number of rows with values separated by commas. And this kind of file, you can open it, for instance, with any spreadsheet editor, like Microsoft Excel. In this case, I'm going to use only Office. And this is what you typically will see. Well, when you open this kind of file, you double click on it, this is what it will show. But so this is a tabular format, right? And GPX is not a tabular format. But as you can see, the information we have here is similar: latitude, longitude, altitude, and so forth, so on. But it doesn't matter. It's just for you to know that it's just a text file, and you can open it with any text editor, and you can perform any editing you need, like copy paste. You select a few points and you replace them with others or whatever. Probably you're not going to do that. If you ever have to do that, just for you to know it's possible, and it's very simple. As I say, in other files you will have additional information which will make things more complicated for visualizing and editing and so on, but this is the most minimalistic, and this is the one that is generated by my scripts, by the way. Now, how are we going to use that for navigation? As I explained to most of you already, I use this application, which is called Routes. Is developed by this guy, Andreas, whatever his name is, and you can install it in your phone directly from Google Play. Unfortunately, this application that is the best I have ever tried is not available for Mac, for iOS devices, right, for iPhones or whatever they're called. But if you have an Android phone, then you're lucky, because this application has no ads, no registration, no subscription. It's completely free. It's very memory efficient, and it has all the essential functionality that you require. Right now I cannot show you how to operate it. Well, you're already familiar with other similar applications, so it's exactly the same, or even with Google Maps. Essentially it navigates you from point A to point B, only that instead of, in this case, using primarily roads and streets, this one is going to navigate you using the GPX file that you're going to load. Is going to navigate you through paths and similar routes, right? This straight and narrow, not straight but narrow. Well, anyway, here you have a manual if you care to read it. There are only a couple of things you need to take into account. So you need to learn how to load your GPX files. Is very straightforward. You need to learn how to download and load the offline maps. This is very important, because when you're navigating, you don't want to rely on online maps. There are the ones that are provided by default are Google online maps, that they don't have the hiking tracks, and if you don't have a Wi-Fi connection, then you won't have any maps. So the first thing you need to do is to download and install offline maps, and there are instructions somewhere here. You have a user manual, you have videos, and if you have any questions, you can ask me. So these are the two things you need to do. First thing, you download the offline maps for the regions that you need. In this case, Luxembourg, Northern France, Belgium, Rhineland-Pfalz, Savoland, probably, and if you go somewhere else like Switzerland or whatever, southern France, you have to download those two, right? How to download them and so far so on is very easy, and it's completely free. So here, as I say, there's no subscription, no fees, no restrictions whatsoever. You just install the application, you use it. And the other thing you have to do is to go to the settings on your phone and make sure that this application is not managed in terms of power management. Well, typically when you install the applications, the first time that you use it, it will guide you on how to do this. Okay? Otherwise, you can ask me, or you can just read the manual or follow the instructions or watch one of these videos, and it's pretty straightforward. Also, this application records. Here you have the instructions for the offline maps and so forth and so on. It gives you turn-by-turn instructions with or without voice, wherever you prefer, with vibration, no vibration, whatever. It's very simple. And that's it for this application. So if you search for it in Google Play, you can search Routes Andreas. Andreas is this guy here. right? Here it is, Andreas Flossdorf. Because otherwise it might not appear on the top 10 of the suggestions, even if in my opinion it should be in the top 1, because it's really good. And if you don't have an Android device, then you will have to go with one of the many applications. You have to choose one. It can be Komoot. Komoot is very good, but it's a pain because it's constantly requesting you to register, to pay, to I don't know what, so it's a bit of a pain to use. And then if you don't pay, you're very restricted in what you can do, but it's an amazing application. You have All Trails, Gaia, Ordnance Survey, whatever. Plenty of applications there. This is my favorite. If you have an Android phone, my recommendation is go with this one. And if you don't, well, you have to go by trial and error and find the one that you like the most, that bothers you less. So this is for the navigation part. This from time instructions. Well, you have this website that you can explore, right? And it's really nice. And in this application also you can choose. We will see a bit later how this works, because the maps they have different layers, or something called overlays. So for instance, I will show you in an application I have here, which is not the same, but is the one I use actually to create the tracks. So in this application is called GPS Prune, and it's a Java application, so you can install it in any device. You can install it in Linux, is the system I'm using, in the Mac, in the Windows, whatever. And I'm going to use it now to illustrate what the different layers are. So here I have 2 layers. These are called tiles, right? If in the cartography jargon, if you're interested in cartography, these are called tiles. So first, my base layer is just an OpenStreetMaps in this case. Or I could have something else. So I go to set my background, and imagine I choose just Mapnik, which is just a server for OpenStreetMaps. And as you see, this is the base layer. There's no overlay. There's no secondary layer, and the hiking trails have disappeared, as you can see. Right? So this is just the base layer, okay? And you can zoom up to 100 meters resolution, okay? And here there's another one, cycling trails, and as you can see now, I have the same map. On top of that map, I have the cycling trails in case I want to go cycling using the designated trails. And in my case, because most of what we do is hiking, I have added this, right? Actually, before I didn't have the hiking trails. I added this today, this very morning. But this is very useful, especially if you are new as an organizer, and perhaps you prefer to rely mostly, even if you create your own original trails, you might wish to rely primarily on signposted trails, right? Not to complicate things too much at the beginning, and as you gain more and more experience, you can be more adventurous and start creating like hikes here in this region where there's no hiking trail and so on, right? And this is actually the application that I use to create the new hikes, but I use it blind, without the hiking trails, like this, raw. Right? And here what I can do is right click and say create series of points, and I can create series of points, right? Obviously, if you can create, as you can imagine, if you want to create a 20 kilometers trail by doing this, it's going to take you a while, Right. So I don't do this anymore. What I do is I create, let me clear this. Delete range, and instead of doing this, right, I create a very sketchy. For instance, let's say we want to start here for whatever reason. Here, this parking lot here. Yes. And so instead of creating this, what I will do is, okay, let's go here. Now, instead of taking this trail, I want to make sure we're going to see the Belvedere. So I go here, and then I want to go here, and I'm going to go here. So instead of creating all the details, I'm going to make just a sketch of what the trail will look like, and then my scripts are going to interpolate, and I'm going to choose the right paths. Okay, that between these 2 points it will trace. You can see it more clearly with an example. If I come here, so the non-short should be the sketchy one. All right, it's not so sketchy actually. Here, let me find the sketchy one. Perhaps the non-revisited. Okay. No. Probably I have been editing this. Let me find one that is really sketchy. Perhaps the whole. No. These are not sketchy because very likely I have been editing them at some point. This is sketchy. No, well, and it doesn't matter. This starts as being sketchy, and then it becomes the full track by virtue of the scripts. Here, this is what we did yesterday morning. Yeah, this is one example of a sketchy one. Right? So a number of points here. I put more points than usual because I wanted to make sure that we were actually visiting every of the single elements. And if I open the full version, you see the difference. So the sketchy one is the one that I made manually, and the detail one is the one that is created by the script. This is how I operate. So in order to do this, I feed this script, which is a Python script, with the sketchy one, and this script can do many things. You can change the starting point, you can invert the direction, you can obviously interpolate between the sketchy points to create a detail map, and it also generates the 2D profile with the peaks and the valleys and the elevation profile and so on and so on. Okay, and then on top of that I run this other script that is the one that generates the 3D thing, right? The 3D profile. So this will be the 2D profile that you are familiar with by now, and for this is the 3D profile, and so this is all automatically done with this script. Okay, so the only thing I need to do is to with this application, which I have closed, yeah, with this application I created a very sketchy trail, and then I run this to produce a proper trail detail and very perfect, and then I run this to produce the 3D mesh. And that this is what I do, right? But obviously this is very complicated. So I'm going to show you what you can do if you wish, of course. So we're going to go to GPX Studio. Instead of doing all this, what you can do here is to use this web application, which is called GPX Studio, to generate your tracks. Let me clear the tracks that I had loaded previously. So here you can load your own tracks. Well, you can also create them from scratch in the same way that I do, a very similar way, but this is much cooler. The difference here is that obviously you're limited to whatever they want to provide, right? Whatever. Whereas if you use my method, you can do whatever you want. Right? So everything. There's always a trade-off between simplicity and versatility, right? So here, I can start creating a trail like this, or if I prefer, is what I can do is to add the hiking trails, which for whatever reason I'm not showing at this stage. I don't use this, so I don't understand, because it was working a minute ago, so I don't understand why. There we are. Okay, here they are. So here in this symbol, which is similar to the layers in the Google Maps, you can add also, I don't know how detailed this is. As I say, I don't use this. And this is very cool, especially if you're a beginner. I think it's useful to know, to have an idea on where the hike, the signposted trails are. So you can improvise up to a point, but you can stick to the signposted trails for the most at the beginning, and then little by little, as I say, as you gain confidence and experience, you can free yourself and go, as I typically do, completely from scratch. Well, you can see this is a very nice tool. So I'm going to hide the trails for a second, because otherwise it's a bit confusing to me. And I'm going to show you how you create a trail with this. It's very simple. So you come here. Why cannot new, yes, I clear. I click on new GPX. As I say, I don't use this, so I'm as new to it as you are. You can also change the base map. I'm not going to do it right now because this is fair enough. You cannot, in addition to changing the layers, the overlays, you can change. So here I can choose my activity, and as you can see, that I have several options. I go for run, hike. I have a number of other options. I can follow roads or not. In this case, I'm going to follow roads. And I can start editing now. So I drop a point there, and imagine I want to come here. You see, it finds the way automatically. For whatever reason, it's not very precise. Well, okay, this is the idea, you see. So this is a very easy way for you to create your own original trails, and they have altitude and everything, right? So You have everything you need. You can save this file. I'm going to add the hiking routes right now. As you see, we're not hiking anywhere. That is not a known place. Well, imagine that now I change my mind and I want to follow this, so I can easily follow this. It's not perfect. I'm not sure. Let me see if I can undo. Well, yeah, you can undo with Control Z. And then once you have your route, you can export it as you can go with you can export whatever you want. You can go with the defaults to download, and this will, you give it a name, and you will have the GPX file. Test it before doing anything in a rush, but you will have the GPX file that you can use immediately. Okay, I tried before and it's okay. It's okay. So this is a tool which is very straightforward, very powerful, and you can use it as it is. The elevation profile, for instance, is very cool the way you have it here. I don't think you can export it, but what you can do with this is to take a screenshot, for instance. If you want to provide the users with an elevation profile, you just take a screenshot and that's it. Okay. So I don't know if I wanted to tell you anything else, but essentially we have covered the essentials. How to navigate, I recommend you using this application, Routes. The important points to remember is learn how to load the GPX, learn how to load the maps, and load the maps beforehand, before you are, because you might not have Wi-Fi when you get to the mountain, so do it the day before or the week before or whatever. And you have to remember to deactivate power management for this application to make sure that it stays always on, always connected to your GPS, and that you don't have to restart it to navigate yourself if you don't use it for 5 minutes or whatever. And we have covered how I personally create the GPX files and the 2D, 3D profiles, and we have covered how you can create your own GPX profiles with this amazing GPX Studio application. There are many other applications which are similar, but I believe for a beginner this is the best. It's pretty cool. I might start using it actually, because it's very convenient if you want to do something easy. So this may provide you the right balance between safety and improvisation, adventure, because for instance I might want to, here I have two auto pedestrian or whatever they are, these two, and imagine I may want to connect them, right? So I might want to do, instead of doing this or this, I might want to do this and this, right? So I can start immediately, right? Let me stop this. All right. Okay, so I'm going to delete what I have done, and I'm going to start from scratch. Right, so we start here on this very point, and we want to follow the thing. Now I understand what it's doing. It's preferring the small paths, so it's okay. It's okay. If you want to take the road, you will have to take smaller steps than I'm taking, because I'm using the same procedure I use for my application here. Well, you have to be a bit more precise, apparently, because otherwise it will take you, it will prefer hiking paths to roads, which makes a lot of sense to me. Don't worry. Well, as you can see, this is a very easy way to create very precise paths, right? You see, it works wonderfully well. And as I say, well, we're going to do this, and then when we get to a point, a certain point, instead of following this, right, we are going to connect it with the other one, right? So we come here and we come here, for instance, and then we come here, and now we have intersected, and we can continue and close the loop, and then we export it, and we have a wonderful new loop connecting to pre-existing auto pedestrians. Then, as I say, I can take a screenshot, of this and share it with my fellow hikers. Okay, so I think this covers everything, and as I was saying before, with this application you can have the right balance between adventure, improvisation, and following signposted paths, and you can propose original hikes. Obviously, you know, if you want to just do the normal signposted paths, you know where to go to home. Here, for instance, I could connect this red one with this blue one, whatever. So very powerful application, and I think that's it for today. This is working. Well, it's a bit glitchy, but it works. I mean, it works reasonably well. Okay, so I hope you have found this interesting, and if you have any questions, well, you can ask me any time. Yep. Have a nice day.